Hello and welcome. You're listening to Nick Needs to Know, the podcast. Join me as I have open, honest, relatable conversations around careers, mindsets, life in general, and what that looks like for each one of our different guests. On this episode, I am joined by 57-year-old Aaron Agnew-Griffith, where we speak openly about his career and lifestyle, both past and present. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy. Right, good morning, Aaron.
Good morning,
Nick. How are you?
I'm really good, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, you're looking forward to this today?
Definitely, yes. No, I have been excited about this and looking forward to having a good chat with you. And,
yeah. I'm looking forward to it. This is a big one for me because we spoke previously and we've sent emails backwards and forwards. And what stood out to me is the amount of jobs that you've had in your career. If you don't mind me saying, you are 57.
Yes, yeah. No, proud of that. Yeah, I am surprised I even made it this way when we go through how I got to this stage. Yeah.
So you're 57 and you're currently on your 47th job. So yes. When did you start working? At the age of 4, 3?
You would think that when you look at the calculations, think, well, how did you get to that many in that short of time? When you consider you only started at 16.
16. I mean, yeah. The basic maths I know, I could only take it back to age 10 and work out you'd had a job every year, and that seemed quite a lot.
Some of them literally lasted one day. Some of them have lasted a week or two, a month, and the current one, where obviously you and I work in this large media company, is my longest and outstanding one at the moment.
16 years, right?
Yes. Yeah. 22nd of January 2007.
Wow, I've only been here 3 years and I couldn't tell you the date I started. So that's good. That's good memory.
It's one of those things. I use the memory thing to remember things like my wife's birthday, our anniversary. When I asked her out, all those things I remember. She can't remember them. I remember. So yeah.
See, I've struggled with things like that. I had to buy. My fiance had to buy a romantic poster with a map on it and a pin dropped on it to where we had our first date. She thought it were romantic, but it was really for me, so I could remember the date we actually got together and we met.
Yeah, completely. It's all those little tricks that you do to help you get through in a relationship, and they think, but they've got us worked out, though.
Yeah, they have, mate. They have. So 47 jobs.
Yes.
16 years old, you started working. Take us back to that first job you had and the first experience you had of earning money.
That was and the 16 was like my first paid job. Obviously, as a child, you do all the normal bits and pieces like paper round, milk boy, various bits and pieces. I was lucky that a lot of the stuff I did was either media based or photographic based because of my mother being a photographer from the 80s or earlier than that, actually the 70s. And she had her own studio, and we lived in Shepherd's Bush.
Okay.
And she used to get. I've met virtually most of the bands and singers from the 80s and 90s because they used to come to our house where my mum would do the photographic work, and it would be those pictures that you'd see on all those kids' pop magazines. Now, I know a lot of the kids nowadays don't see it because it's all social media, but when we were kids, it was all those magazines, and it was like pop fans or whatever, and it would be stories and they would print the lyrics from the songs, etc. So all the stars of most of the bands, etc., had been to our house. So I got kind of, at a younger age, got numb to the whole star-studded, starstruck, starry-eyed, all these famous people. And you'd see them. And in one of the cases when Tony Hadley of Spandau Ballet, that was one of the most famous ones, when I think it was Gold, when it hit number 1, he was having some work done. And my mum said, when I walked in the room, here's Tony Hadley. And I went, all right, Mum, can I have £5? I need to go out. And it's just because he was, anyone else would be, Tony Hadley. And it would have been, And it was the same. It just wasn't the same for me. You get to see all these different people, and it was another person. And in our current media one, when in the kind of the studio area where I work, or I did work, you get to see all the famous kind of stars as well appearing, and it's just like, well, hang on, you're two people in front of me, and I just want to get my coffee. Can you just hurry up? And everyone else is like, oh, can I have an autograph? Can I have a selfie? Oh, come on, I want to get my coffee. I want to get back to work. And it didn't bother me. So it's like I'm very not starstruck or things like that, and it's interesting. But you kind of get into these sort of things. So I became a photographer bag boy. So you get to travel around and you go to all these different places, setting it up, etc. And you kind of get used as the test model, if you like, where she sets up the light and all the bits and pieces for the photographic shoots. And that led into one of these jobs that I got later on, which was doing catalogue modelling.
Catalogue modelling.
Littlewoods. I don't know if I could ever find. Yeah, like Littlewoods. You know where you see them in like the shell suits in the 80s, and they're kind of kids pointing or pretending they play football. I was one of those kids that was just, and it's so embarrassing. I've never been able to find the catalogue where I was actually in the photographic one, but
I'm sure it'll be in some archive.
Oh, I'm sure someone's got it somewhere. One of those embarrassing ones you see you come out when you've got that kind of weird 80s. I had like curtain hairstyle. So
but back then it'd have been cool. You'd have been the cool kid.
Oh yeah, because you got the shell suits, you got to try things. There was one of the jobs that I did in between various other jobs, and I think it was called Stewart's, the Shepherd's Bush, and they sold things like the Pringles, Cervanticinis, the Gucci, all the kind of stuff that you wore in the 80s that was like the flash stuff. And I worked in that shop there, helping sell it and stock market and things. And you got it as a discount. So I got to wear all these cool Cervantini shell shoots and feeler tops, etc. And it was good. Couldn't afford any of them. I didn't earn enough to afford any of them. So that was the only way I could get the clothing things. And that's kind of when I was looking back at the list of what we were talking about, how I've approached jobs. And it's always been, well, I like the look of that, or I need to get this. So how do I get this? I better do this job to get me to get that sort of thing. So it's always been those sort of things. So when we were talking about the first paid job, I was a chef. I know it sounds like a chef for British Airways, making the onboard food. So if you ever ate anything from British Airways food on the airplanes in the 80s, you probably had my cooking, and it wasn't very good.
I think everything in the 80s tasted like smoke.
It wasn't very nice. The way we made everything and put it in those little plastic pots and sealed these things, and then they all went off, etc. And it wasn't exactly very nice.
So I'm just going to read off here a list, because I keep going back to this list and I'm thinking, this can't be one person that's done all this. So obviously you've said chef. I've got here army, dispatch rider, teaching assistant, road sweeper, barman in a pub, wine bar and nightclubs, social host, private investigator, actor, de-icer, plane washer, pest control, waiter, ice skating marshal, bouncer, farm help, and my favourite one, stripper. So I'm assuming you've not missed a word off there, wallpaper stripper.
No.
It does say lol at the end of that word stripper. So that's an interesting kind of career journey you've been on there.
That was part of the nightclub thing. It was one of these things that the nightclub barman traditionally, so the nightclub I worked on in East London at the time, said, look, traditionally whenever we have our first ladies' night, the barmen have to form a group and they go on as the warm-up group. We don't expect you to get fully exposing, but we'd expect you to come up with some sort of routine. And the owner of the nightclub said, Aaron, I know you're going to be up for this, so I'll put you in charge of that. And I had 3 weeks to get 2 other barmen and work out a routine that we were going to do on the stage. And we still didn't even have a name. It was about 30 minutes before we went on the stage. We still didn't even have a name for what the group was going to be called. And we didn't even have the music. And the DJ said, look, what do you want to be called? The group that was following us was a professional group that paid for. They were called CLIMAX. And we looked at each other and laughed and said, well, we're definitely not. Oh, we're anti-climax. So that was our group.
You
So
were going to say that.
and we went on, and Rob would do the splits. Will would do his backflip, and I didn't really have any skills, and I was kind of like the clown of it. And unknown to me, when you kind of like, we had Velcro trousers, so you could just rip them off, and we were just imitating. And it was just a joke, laugh, and a dance, etc. on there. And we had the name of the club spelt out on our buttock cheeks, and when that was the ending piece of rotating our buttocks cheeks, and everyone's having a good laugh there. But I couldn't do anything, so I just did this jump, and I didn't even know where it came from. I jumped up, legs akimbo, as they say, left and right, and I touched the toes, and that was our kind of routine, and it was a good laugh, and we got cheered and congratulated on it, and it was such a buzz. It took me 2 hours to calm down on the adrenaline rush. It was such a laugh. But that's all it was. It was just a one-off kind of thing. But the one-off I thought was going to be a one-off turned out we had to do it about another 3-4 times after that.
Well, you must have done a good job then.
It was, yeah. I've got a couple of pictures of it as well, of the routine that Rosemary, the waitress there, took a picture of us doing the routine, and it was, great memories. But Brilliant. I'm not sure at 57. I'm more likely to have to pay out refunds for people if they wanted to watch me do it again.
So transferable skills from there, I would guess, would be performing well under pressure.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, the lot of the stuff I've learned over the years has definitely helped me move forward and grow within the positions. Whereas a lot of it was, as I hope we're going to discuss, about the mental health side of it that was causing a lot of the issues, where it was all, I like that. It's a shiny new job. Let me go for that. I'll apply for that. And I drop the next one. Then I'll apply for that one. And then I'll apply for that one. And every one of them was the excitement of doing something different. Like the de-icer. I worked at Luton Airport, de-icing airplanes in the winter. So you'd start at like 4 a.m. and you'd do up to 30 airplanes. And in the summer, you'd be washing them. And all through that time, you're replacing the carpets inside the airplane, replacing the carpet seats, technically cleaning the cockpit area. And when the plane would come in for what was called a C check, you would help strip out all the interior. So all the chairs would go, all the seats, all the overhead lockers, the toilet, the gallery, the cabin, all the captain's seats, co-pilot seats, everything would go. And there'd just be this long line in the middle. And then you would technically clean everything. The engines would be stripped out, the wheels would be taken off. And you could walk on this plane. And it was the whole experience of being and doing things that, as a passenger, you think, I'm sitting here on the plane, etc. I wonder what happens here. But you got to see what goes on beyond that and see how airplanes are worked on and looked after, and how safe they really are.
So these are sort of your early jobs early on in your career.
Yeah. So one of the times, like dispatch rider, I was did dispatch riding on a motorbike. I did it on a push bike, which was extremely knackering and you don't realize how much dirt and fumes when you take off your kind of like scarf off the face. You suddenly realize how dirty your face is from the all exhaust fumes. It's probably better now because of the actual forms itself, or the exhaust fumes have calmed down now. Yeah. So it's probably better for most dispatch riders. But I also did multi-drop, I think it was called, with one of these big dispatch lorry driving ones. So you take a lot of big packages, and you're just driving around London and multi-dropping them on there. So dispatch is a mixture of bits and pieces.
Teaching assistant?
That was because my daughter was in primary school and it was helping with English and maths because I was doing shift work. I would have like 4 days off or 5 days off. And on those days, I would help out at the school and help the kids do reading and do mathematics. Bear in mind, I actually left school with no qualifications at all. Yeah. I failed all my. It was at a time of the years when it was in the early 80s because I went to boarding school. It was an all-boys boarding school up in Ipswich called Wolverston Hall, and I was there from 1977 to 1982. And it was very interesting because it was very active. You played rugby, you played cricket. We didn't really play football. Football wasn't really the sport. It was what was called gentlemen's sports that we did. And you'd learn things like horse riding and fencing and shooting and badminton and squash and athletics and sailing. And you got to learn to do all these sort of things. So you were always very active, and they had their own Army Cadet service on there, which was the Parachute Regiment Army Cadets. And you learnt to do shooting, and you learnt to do all this. And it was traditional that you would kind of leave boarding school and either go into some sort of managerial job, or you'd go into the services because of the way we were trained at the boarding school side of it.
And is that what led on to you joining the army then?
Yes, yeah. It didn't last very long. Unfortunately, at 17, I had a diving board accident. I was doing this silly mucking about on the 10-meter board. I went and dived off on the right and didn't push off correctly and hit the middle board on the way down, and then damaged my spine and lost the use of my legs for 2 weeks, and got told at 17 that, sorry, we don't think you're ever going to walk again. Unfortunately, it was just badly damaged cartilage around that area. But had to leave. I wasn't fit enough. So I joined the Territorial Army when I was fit enough after that. How
did you deal with that then? Because at 17, you think anything that happens to you at that age, you think it's end of the world anyway, don't you?
Yeah.
To lose your career and to be told possibly you'll never walk again. How did that land with you?
It's a shock because you know, like you said, it's never walk again. But I'm so active. I've got so many things I want to do. I loved ice skating. I loved roller skating. I'm very physical all the time. And then suddenly all of those things are going to be taken away from you. And I was shocked for 2-3 days, lying in the hospital. And it was only when they did what they called it a lumbar puncture. And it's where you curl up like a ball, and they put a needle into your spine. I'm going to shock some people with this because it might scare the people. They put a needle in your back and then into your spine, and then turn it slightly and then go up into the spine to take the fluid samples to check if you'd actually infected it or testing it. And it was like at 2:00 in the morning. And because it was a rare operation, they had all these junior doctors come in from all over the place to watch what was going on. Yeah. And they said, look, if you do straighten up, you could snap the needle in the spine and we will have to operate on you straight away. And it was all this. I didn't have any family around me at the time, and it was lonely, and I was scared, and I was upset. And I don't know whether it was the matron because this was the time when matron ran, the head nurse ran the actual wards. These are the ones when you see them on the Carry On films where they come in at like 6:00 in the morning, pull the curtains open and open up the windows and say, let's get some fresh air in here. And you're like, what? I just want to lie in and get better. Yeah. But matron took sympathy on me, and yeah, she looked after me.
After that, then what did that lead on to you doing? Did you have to rethink things, or?
Yeah, unfortunately,
rehabilitation.
It was. There was a James Bond film. I think it was the Sean Connery one, and he was on this kind of health club thing, and they put him on a machine where he was kind of getting his back retracted and pushing, and they kind of put it on fast, and it was that's kind of the machine I got put on to help stretch out my spine and put it back. And it was like one of those medieval racks that you see people being tortured with, being pulled apart and helping stretching. But it never got better. And over the years, I constantly damaged it, and my legs would go again, and I was stuck in not being able to move properly. And it was ice skating accidents, motorbike accidents, car accidents, horse riding accidents, just even some of the simple ones of picking up a cardboard box, the back would go, and it never repaired properly. Until about 25 years ago, I saw an absolutely amazing chiropractor, and he popped and cracked and stretched and did some really weird things with my spine. And now I don't feel any of it. It doesn't go at all.
And then you've become a father at what age? Is this later on in? Because you mentioned here you've got children.
Yes, I've got 3 daughters and a son. Yeah. Oldest daughter will be 36 in June this year. Second daughter will be 31 currently. And third daughter is 25. Yes, 25. And the son is 23. And this is through 3. I've had 3 marriages. And a lot of these things, I didn't realize how I was fluctuating. It's the same with the jobs. This thing when I mentioned about shiny things, and I didn't know, because obviously coming back from the 60s and 70s, they didn't know what dyslexia is. They didn't know what ADHD was. They didn't know what depression was. You were just called a problem child or a hyperactive child. You know, oh, he's just a very active child, etc. Or the common one was, oh, you're just thick. You're just stupid. And it's those mental labels that you got as a child. And eventually you start believing, oh, I must be thick. I must be stupid because I can't do this. I can't spell, or I can't do this. And it wasn't until I was in my, I think, 30s when I was analysed by a educational psychologist who said, yep, you've definitely got dyslexia. And in my 40s, I found out I had depression, and in my 50s, and only a couple of years ago, diagnosed with ADHD. And I've done the kind of route. I'm now on ADHD medication, which has calmed myself down. I'm not as angry. And a lot of the anger came from the frustration, because I knew I wasn't stupid. I knew I was clever. I could do things, but I just saw things differently that others didn't tend to see. And this was part of the ADHD and the dyslexia, because of the way you express things differently. And this is how all this job hopping's happened as well. I got bored quickly, and if it didn't keep my attention, it would jump to something else. And it's the same with a lot of things like projects. Oh, I'm going to write this book, or I've got this invention. Oh, I've seen this play, or I can see this. I'm going to constantly switch, and I never finished a single project. And the same with my relationships. I didn't kind of give my best because I was constantly hyper. I was constantly angry. I was frustrated. And that's kind of caused a lot of the failures in the relationships and the relationships with my children, because of the way I was back there. And that kind of led to 2018, when I had a very bad depressional period. And decided I couldn't do this. This was my third attempt at suicide because of the anger and the frustration and the depression and not being diagnosed with my ADHD properly. And no one had picked it up at that point. And 2018 was my third attempt to kind of end it all. And I drove to our media company and went to climb up on the roof and was going to jump off. And it was just that one little thing that one of my colleagues turned around as I was about to go into the stairwell that takes me up to the roof. And he said, oh, Aaron, how did that interview go? And it was such a side swipe, telling me to answer something that I hadn't even thought about, that I just broke down and cried. And I knew that then something was wrong. I was like a passenger on a train or a passenger in a car. I had no control of what I was doing. I was just watching through the car window why my evil, depressional self was driving this car to push me over the edge and say, look, we can't do this anymore. We've been here so many times. We've got to go. Let's just stop now. And you don't have any love to your family or anyone else, and you don't care. And it's that narrow-mindedness that you just, that's it, I've got to end it and give up. But a lot of counseling later, a lot of addressing, a lot of diagnosis, and mentally, spiritually and physically, now I'm in such an amazing place. And I now act as a mental health champion for colleagues I work with. And when I came back from having 6 months off work because of the depressional side of it, I told everyone and stood up and said, look, this is the reason what it was. And secretly, 3 of the guys came back to me and said, look, I've been suffering. I just didn't realize it. And thank you for being open. I now know that I can actually say something about it and push it. And this is some of the things that we, as men, we tend to not really express as much. It's very hidden. And as I listened to your previous podcast on some of the, it's not a done thing. We don't, when we were in the 70s and 80s, you never said things like that. You just, oh, really? Oh, well, I'm not interested in that. Oh, I don't show any feeling. I can't do it. It's just not a manly thing to do. And it would be, if you told your friends down the pub, it'd be, oh, you big girl, or you sissy, and you'd be laughed at. But generally, when I said that to a group of friends that I was with at the time in the pub, the one who actually tried to take the joke out of it, he was the one who actually had more of a depressional period, and he was the one mentally suffering. and I recognized the signs, but I couldn't recognize the signs until I'd actually gone through the stages of recovery and regression and mental awareness and acceptance, accepting who I was, accepting what I had done and what was happening.
So just going back to that, you mentioned it was your third attempt.
Yeah.
In 2018.
18, yeah.
What was different about this time to put you back on the right track, so to speak? Do you think it was a mixture of just that, maybe that one comment of your colleagues?
If this colleague hadn't said it, if this colleague hadn't intervened and said something, I wouldn't be here talking to you now, because it was the final. I knew when I'd done the counselling and readdressed what I was at that point, where I was going through, that was the actual final one. The time before that, I was in my late 20s, and I'd broken up with my first marriage. I was severely depressed and lost another job. I've been made redundant. I've been sacked, and I've left jobs, etc. So I've been through all the whole process. And as one of the previous jobs as an IT manager, I've had to make people redundant, and I've had to sack people, and it's that whole kind of feeling side of it. And in the late 20s, I just felt like there was no future, etc. And I had morphine tablets for my back because it kept going, and it was whiskey and morphine. And when you wake up in A&E and find that they kind of got everything out of you, you feel embarrassed, and you just want to get out there quickly. And you feel painful because of what they've done to get out all the chemicals out of you. And the first one, and when I was doing the counselling, found out I was 12 was my first attempt, and I'd cut my wrists. And this was my second year at boarding school.
You was 12?
I was 12, yeah. And I know exactly when it was as well, because I was walking out of the school, and we had all these big fields, and it was down by the River Orwell. And I was sitting on the River Orwell, and I was crying, and I was upset. And why doesn't anyone want me? Why doesn't anyone love me? And it was that whole rejection as a child. Why has my mum sent me to boarding school? Why didn't she want me? And it was the whole rejection, and I couldn't cope. And I had a razor blade because I was doing model aircraft at the club at the time. And I was just thought, well, if no one wants me, what's the point being here? And I cut my wrists, and I did it in the boarding school at the time. And it was lucky enough, a senior boy saw what I did, and he immediately grabbed my wrist and squeezed it really tight. And we walked over to sick bay, and Nursey there did a normal thing, you stupid little boy, and cleaned it up and stitched it up. That was it. And it wasn't addressed. And you weren't flagged or anything. They didn't. Your housemaster would say, well, why did you do that? I said, well, because I didn't feel like anyone loved me. Oh, you'll get over it. Just do some more exercises. You'll be fine. And that was it. It was that whole mental attitude of how you dealt with mental health issues at school.
Wow. So you think maybe it's a mixture of, this time around, the environment we live in nowadays, more
awareness, more acceptance that
more
people
receptive
are suffering.
To things like that. Yeah.
And it's hard when you can see the signs of friends, and you say to them, look, if you need to talk, I'm here. I have been through what you're going to go through. And you see some of them, they recall. What do you mean? I haven't got anything wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with take the spotlight off me. I don't want to hear it. And even though you're only doing it as a one-on-one, and you say later on, then they'll say to you, yeah, Aaron, I didn't want to face the fact that I actually had real issues, that I was struggling. And you talk to them, and you understand it, and you can sympathize with people and understand those sort of situations.
You tend not to see depression until it's either one, too late, or two, you've come out the other side of it.
Yeah.
And look back.
See, so it's one of the things that has kind of helped me, that now I've accepted. I rejected at the beginning. My mother was also, apart from a photographer, she was also my art teacher at primary school. So you was expected to be good at art, expected to be good at painting. And I was rubbish. I couldn't paint for toffee. It was really rubbish, my paintings. But you were expected to do that. So there's a lot of pressure on that stuff. And because of that side, so both my parents were alcoholics, and they came from alcoholic parents, and they were abusive. Their parents were abusive, and my grandparents were abusive to my parents, and my parents obviously were abusive to me, physically and mentally and verbally. I was abused a lot as a child because of their alcoholicism. And I mean, my dad worked as a concrete engineer, and he would design the pressures and the style and the mixes of what concrete would do to support huge concrete posts. And for an example, the A4 flyover in near Hammersmith and Chiswick, he designed those concrete posts to take all the weight of those cars. They're all being rebuilt now because of the strength that was back in the 60s and 70s. But he would start his day off drinking half a bottle of whiskey or 4 cans of lager. He would then go at lunchtime drinking with all the labourers, and they would drink 8, 9, 10 pints of beer, come home, have some food, and then go drinking out all night. So that was kind of like the norm in the 70s. And it was anyone who's been in those things, you knew that avoid your parents when they're either hungover or they are not in a good mood because they're drunk. But you kind of couldn't do it when you lived in a house. They were always fighting. And my mother also became a druggie, and my 2 sisters were druggies, and everyone in the family smoked. And I kind of felt like I was the black sheep of the family. I very rarely drink. I've never smoked in my life, and I never take drugs other than what the doctor prescribes. And I was kind of like the odd one out. But I don't know why I didn't follow suit when I was such an impressionable child that I would latch on to things very quickly. And all of those kind of, so I rejected art. I rejected photography. I rejected all those things because that's what represented my mother. But as I progressed and I got better with my mental health, I'm now switching and going back to my roots of doing photography and doing art, etc., and taking up things like pottery as well.
Do you feel that's because nowadays you may be in a more stable mental position to go back and sort of relive those activities?
Yeah, mentally I'm strong enough to face them and realize that they're not the representation of what the past was.
Yeah.
And all that concept. And a lot of the stuff probably was I was fighting and running away from everything. Anything that got kind of close, because you're so closed emotionally and you didn't show a lot of love. One, because that's sometimes part of the ADHD, the shiny object that you want to jump onto next. And then that doesn't become shiny anymore. You move on to the next thing. The same happened with relationships, that it was always constant because of the alcoholism and the drug abuse from my mother. There was no affection. There was no love it's the old saying, mother's boys, or mummy's boys, daddy's girls. Yeah. And in our relationship, my sisters have always said, Mum always thought you were their favourite. You could never do anything wrong. You were always her favourite. But I never felt that I got any love from her. And part of the regression is accepting that your mother was never going to be the mother, never going to give you that love as the son that you wanted, and that what you missed out from, you're never going to get. And hearing those you're never going to get is the hardest thing. And once you got over them and accept it, and you cry, you cry a lot out of all of these things. But it's all those emotional onion layers that you have to keep peeling back to get to the core.
So fast forwarding to 2023, what does Aaron look like today? What's his life? Are we still on this third marriage? Or
Yes. See, I say I can't leave the media company because I started in 2007, and in July of 2007 is when I finally wore my wife down. I spent a year chasing her. My wife is Polish. She came over in 2006 and started working in the local coffee shop, the kind of branded one. And where I was working shifts, where I worked 12-hour shifts for 5 days, 7 a.m. 7 p.m., and then you have 5 days off, and then you do 5 nights. My days off were spent sitting in that coffee shop, trying to get her attention, asking her out regularly on those days off. And I would drink 8 to 10 cups of cappuccinos, trying to see. She must have thought, what a weirdo, sitting there staring at her starry-eyed, and I couldn't get over it. It just kind of clicked. And eventually, after a year of asking her out, she didn't even know my name. She used to know me as Mr. Cappuccino. That's all she ever knew me as. Yeah. and she would say, okay, I'll go out with you one date, etc. And
I bet you didn't take her for a coffee.
do you know our first date, our first kind of meeting was actually at the coffee shop outside when she introduced me to her son, and
Yeah.
he was 6-year-old boy come over from Poland and didn't speak a word of English. And yeah, he if you could see him now, he's like 23, and you would never guess he was Polish from the way he speaks. And his English is outstanding.
Yeah.
And what he's been through. He's got a degree, and he's now doing one of these business managements for a very well-known building company. And yeah, outstanding. Really is amazing that he's done there. And he calls me dad.
Well, that's nice.
And he associates me as I am as dad, etc.
Yeah.
And it's nice, but we always joke about the marriage would never last if I left the media company, and that if I leave it because I've been with her for 16 years, I would actually have to leave the media company. Yeah, if I left the media, our relationship just wouldn't last that long. And it's
so your other kids, then, do you still have a lot of contact with those? And
unfortunately, I think due to my ADHD and depression, I've lost contact with my oldest daughter, and my second daughter only likes to talk to me via social media, because of the rejection. My first marriage is my first two daughters. My second marriage is my youngest daughter, and obviously my third marriage is with the son. And they just said, "Oh, you're just going to get married and have more kids," and it was that whole rejection that they just didn't feel that they could keep in communication with me, and that my ADHD meant also that I didn't maintain the love and affection that a father should have done with his children. So I know I'm at fault at that, and I have written letters to them and said to them, "Look, I take full responsibility. I am actually at fault. This is my fault that I rejected you and spent my time and effort on that current child until that relationship ended, and then focused on the next child." So it was a hard thing to accept that was my fault. But if I don't make that first step of saying, "I did this, I apologize, this is my wrong," who knows what will happen in the future? Maybe that when they have children, that they will turn around and say, "Look, okay, let's start a relationship, a friendship."
Yeah. Future career-wise, what does that look like for you? Do you have any? Are you kind of settled now after your 47 jobs, or are you looking?
Do you know what? I actually kind of knew you were going to ask me this thing. Even now at 57, I have no idea what I want to do. I have never had a focus. I've never thought. I mean, when you're at school, you think, "Oh, what do you really want to be?" And I've wanted to be like an astronaut, or I've wanted to be in the army, or I wanted to be a private investigator. And I was all dazzled by all these films that you'd see, and you think, "Oh, I want to do that. I want to be this." And when you've got all this excitement, you're a hyperactive kid, etc. You just want to be everything. But even when I've gone through everything, I've still never said, "Well, this is the career I want to be. This is what I want to do. I want to do this." No, I still have no idea. I probably have one kind of thing. I'd like to get to 50 jobs, and then I think I'd stop and kind of stay there. But I have no idea. I have one idea what one of the next jobs I'd like to do. I wouldn't mind having a go at the Royal National Lifeboat Institution and be a volunteer doing that sort of thing. Yeah. Whether it's actually in the boat or whether it's the support side in back at the shore, I'd like to have a go at that.
I think, do you not have to live within a certain radius? So?
You've got to live on the coastal thing, and you've got to be within 3-4 miles, etc., from the actual base itself, and you have a pager on with you with all the time that you're going to be paged at any point to be sent out from there, etc. So even with the media company we work at, that was my 45th job. I've left the kind of the live broadcasting side of it, and I moved May last year. I now work with one of the streaming parts of the media company, still within the media company, but now I work with the streaming part of it, and I test the streaming, the app with it on all these different devices, so that when people can play it, it works, etc. and I tested all like the new features. But in between that, there was a department that was that they did the reenactment. So when you watch History, Crime Investigation, and Discovery Channel, they would have all these kind of reenactments of a crime or something that happened in history or program, etc. And I was one of those actors. It was initially advertised on the actual internal website to saying, would you like to be a filming extra? And I turned up on the day, and the first one I did, the actual lead actor at the time never turned up. And because I looked like him, they said, okay, would you like the lead role? And I said, well, the last time I acted was actually at boarding school. I've never done anything else. And I was a 1970s Louisiana sheriff. And I just finished in a Movember, and I had one of these weird big handlebar moustaches that went right across and down my chin. And I had a middle piece in there and big sideburns. And they made me shave off the middle bit underneath the lip. So I just looked like one of these Hell's Angel bikers with these big handlebar things. They put a sheriff's hat on and a uniform. And I was investigating a murderer. Some Mexican guy killed 32 people, but he sexually assaulted them, but made them dig their own graves first, killed them and sexually assaulted them, and then buried them. And I was the sheriff investigating them. And you had to look like it was summer of 1972 in Louisiana, where it was going to be 50 or 40 degrees, etc., and humidity. It was 2nd of November, and it was freezing, and it was in Rickmansworth in some old mansion in the wooded areas, and it was made to look like that. When you see the film, it actually looks like it is sunny and everything, but we were freezing. It was 2 degrees outside, and we were trying to pretend it was hot and sunny, and all we had was short sleeve shirts on, and we were freezing. But it was a good memory. It was a good experience.
So that you were kind of right place, right time there, weren't you, with that one?
It was.
You turned up as an extra.
And and everyone who turned up, one of the installation engineers, his girlfriend turned up with him just to sit there. She got on as a walking extra in the background. So everyone who turned up got to go on there. I was a Winston Churchill's assistant. I've been a bomb maker. This was a World War II inventor who called the limpet mine, and it was a magnetic bomb that the special boat services swim underwater, put it on the side of a boat and swim away, and it would explode and things. And it was how that person, and his name was called, and I've forgotten his name now, it will come to me in a second, but he did this thing. I also was a alcoholic Glaswegian Catholic priest who was accused of murdering a Polish woman and burying him under his altar. Nobby Clark was the bomb maker. That was it, Nobby Clark. And he had a reputation of being a very should we say, sexually adventurous person, because part of the invention was he worked out that aniseed balls, when it was in seawater, would take exactly 10 minutes to melt.
Yeah.
And it would be what he needed for the special boat services guys to swim away. But to transport it there, he needed a protection so that as soon as they went into the water, it wouldn't start melting. So he used condoms, or prophylactics, as they called them back then in the Second World War. So he went round all the chemists buying as many prophylactics as he could to do all the experiment. And he got a label of being a sexually adventurous person. And everyone who knew me when I did all the stripping job thing, said, "Oh yeah, you're perfectly suited for that job role, for that one there." And then, of course, when the alcoholic Catholic priest came along, accused of murdering a Polish woman, they said, "Oh yeah, with you and your wife, you're obviously getting a trial run, are you?"
Yeah.
So,
so looking back on all your career, I mean, it is quite an eclectic mix of jobs and responsibilities and stuff like that. So I think naturally, as you're progressing through your career life, you look back to see what you can take forward.
Definitely.
If that makes sense.
No, I fully understand that.
How do you go about looking back and telling your future employer, I'm the person you want?
I had that question asked to me about the internal position. So leaving the live broadcast to go to this other position that I'm now in within the media company. And I was asked, they said, why would we employ you? Look how many jobs you've had, etc. Are you not just going to leave us after 2 months if you get bored? And I explained about my mental health issues, that I was in the process when I was going through the interview stage. I was still on the um, aftercare with the nurses of the actual ADHD tablets I was taking, and I was fluctuating up and down, and I was spaced out, or I'd be angry, or I couldn't sleep, or I was agitated, and I had to try and put on a whole facade, if you like, to saying, look, this will settle down. I'm not going to be the same. I am going to be in a lot better person. But it was also the fact that, look, every one of those jobs has got me here today. And if I hadn't done them, I wouldn't be the character I am now. And I wouldn't be able to give the best service. And I always looked at, how can I progress? How can I make things better? And that's how I've always looked at things. How can it be better? What can I do to make things better? And you look at all the bits and pieces that you've learned, all the people who've taught you or mentored you, even through some of the darkest times, and got you to where you are now. And even when I was doing the training and as the senior person in the team on the live broadcasting side, I was training new juniors coming in. And one thing I always said to them is, look, always do your 5-minute checks. Doesn't matter how many times. If it's every hour you have to do that 5-minute check, the 5-minute check may only take 20 seconds, and you have to do it every hour. Yes, it might have worked last hour and the hour before that and the hour before that, but that one time you don't check it is the one time it's going to go wrong, and you're going to be the one held responsible. So do your 5-minute check, and I try and drum that into them, and when that's happened, when it's worked, because when that junior becomes the senior person on the shift, and you suddenly hear them training juniors and say, look, do your 5-minute check. You've got through to them. You know that you've managed to get someone to understand the logic behind why you do these remedial jobs. And some of the jobs in the past I've done have been really remedial based jobs, and they're mundane, and you've got to do it every day, every minute, every hour, etc. But they have a reason, and a lot of people don't understand that side of the reason. And it's your bubble, your little world. And this is how I try and explain it. Your world that you live in, and everything that affects it, is your little bubble. If you don't look after those things and don't do the smaller things and look after those small things, it will hit the big things and your bubble will burst. And you've got to see how those bubbles overlap. So I did a lot of secondments and worked in other departments that integrated or worked with or talked with or communicated with our department. So I understood what they wanted, what they needed, what made their bubble work, what made them happy for them to actually have that, and how it affected ours. If their bubble burst, what happened to our area? And once you understood that, they would then know when you're on shift, if you're going to do your job, they know that it won't affect their job and that their job will be smoother. But as soon as you don't do your job, their job becomes and then that's that whole anger. Their job didn't go well. Their position didn't have. It was their days ruined. They're now angry and they're focused on you, and it's going to be reflecting on you. And oh God, he's on shift. I better make sure I got everything correct, because it's going to go wrong and it's going to affect me and ruin my day. And then it's that, well, their day's ruined. They've got the hump. That has a knock-on effect on who they deal with and whose bubble interacts with their world. And it's the whole thing. It's like when we were talking about that person who asked how my interview went for the other job. Every time I walk around the street, I see people and I smile and I'll say good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Doesn't matter. I don't even know these people, but that hi, hello, a smile could change someone's life. You never know how much it's going to affect that person. They could be having the worst day. They could have heard the worst news. Someone in their family could have passed away, etc. But that good morning, a smile could just take them off that edge just a little bit. And it's the same with these jobs. It's the mentoring that you do to get them to do the other. You're not going to say, look, if you don't do this, you're going to be classed as thick and stupid, because I'd never say that to anyone now, even though I've lived through those sort of things. You've got to try and help them understand and get them to know where their limits are and accept that side of it, etc. But it's hearing them say, do your 5-minute job. You've got through to them and that you've mentored someone. And it was all these jobs in the past that you pick up from the experience. And everyone's different. Some people were never going to get that understanding of the 5-minute one. So you have to find an alternative way to get them to understand things. It's like some people are good at sport and some people aren't. And you would try and find a way to find metaphors that will relate to either their job or their hobby or something to get them to understand that job and how the job gets done.
Very interesting. I could sit here for hours listening to your stories, but I'm going to move it on to quickfire questions.
Okay.
You've been looking forward to this.
Yes.
So it's time for quickfire questions. Right, quickfire questions, Aaron. I want quick answers. We can elaborate, but just give me the first thing that comes into your head. So there's 5 of them. Question number 1. What advice did you get that was the most rewarding?
As I said, 5-minute check. Do your 5-minute check. I learned that in probably the army side of it. It's get your steps right. When you're doing your marching, get your step, focus on your step and being in line with the guy in front of you. Once you've got your rhythm and your cycle right, then everything it clicks. It just fits and you feel comfortable. You can then focus on the next bit because you don't need to focus on your steps. You're in line, you're marching, etc. And it was that whole mental attitude of being in sequence and remembering the 5. He didn't call it 5-minute check. Staff or colour sergeant at the time, he didn't call it 5-minute check. He said, just focus on that small section. Do the small steps. The small steps all add up to make one big step. And it didn't mean just in marching, but whether it's marching or you're breathing when you're doing the shooting or whatever you approach in life, do the small steps. Break down the problem into small steps and make them. You then suddenly become. It's one big step.
Yeah, this reminds me of a book I'm reading at the minute, which is I think it's The Boy, the Horse, the Fox and the Mole.
Yes, I saw your recommendation for that.
Yeah, one of the things is the boy, I think, says to the horse, they're in the woods and he says, I can't see where I'm going. And the horse turns and says to the boy, can you see your next step? Yes, take that. Sort of one step at a time.
One step at a time. It is always one step at a time. You can't expect to go from, when we were talking about mental health issues, you can't expect to suddenly go from that deeper and that emotional trauma to suddenly being all clear of it and able to handle it. Yeah. You have to take that first step. Everything you do, I've done this Tough Mudder at the weekend. I could never have done a Tough Mudder 10 years ago because I wasn't mentally strong enough. I didn't feel fit enough. When you do the training for these sort of things, like 0 to 5Ks, those couch ones, etc., I'm doing that with my wife's doing it and I'm supporting her because my level of fitness is better. It's that first one. Let's get out. Let's just do the walk. Let's do those first steps. Just start with a walk. Don't do the run. Don't expect to be running 5K straight away. Just do those steps. Like you said, the boy in there, take that first step. Yeah. And that leads you forward, etc.
Question 2. What is your favourite shop?
I was going to say Mr. Dobbs, Mr. and Mrs. Dobbs. They were the sweet shop at the end of my road where I lived in Shepherd's Bush. It was called Devonport Road. And it was directly in line. And anyone who knows Shepherd's Bush will know the directly in line road from Devonport Road is Queen's Park Rangers football ground. And that's obviously who I support. But Mr. and Mrs. Dobbs was the favourite sweet shop at the end there. And you know, the old pennies that you used to get, 4 mojos, 4 blackjacks or fruit salads, etc. you get from there. And it was such one of those walking in the sweet shops and it was like, oh, wow, look at all those sweets. And they had the glass fronting so you couldn't reach in to help yourself. They got everything for you. And it was one of those things, great childhood memories of looking at all those sweets and the variety and availability of everything there. And I was lucky enough that when we were about to leave, when I was about to leave boarding school, etc., I got to work there part time, and I got to stand behind the counter where Mr. and Mrs. Dobbs used to work. And it was always Mr. and Mrs. Dobbs, and they were always lovely and nice and care. They were like your favorite grandparents that you'd always go for.
Yeah.
And it was such a thing. And later on in life, I got to work for Treebles, the sweet makers. And it was computer operations and running their mainframe computers, but you worked at the head office. And it was that whole attitude that the Robert brothers, because Treebles spelled backwards is Roberts, and that was the three brothers who owned Treebles. They had so many things stolen from the warehouses that they turned around and said, look, we've got a dedicated room. Go and help yourself. As many sweets as you want. Help yourself. And it was always a laugh. You could always tell the new people, they're the ones going home for the first 2 weeks with carrier bags full of sweets to show. After that, you're so sick of sweets. I didn't eat sweets for 5 years after that. It was disgusting until Cadbury's brought this out. Yeah, that's what that was what their idea was. If you give it all for free, you get sick of it. We had one guy who was only employed to topping up the bowls of sweets on everyone's desk in the head office, and that was his job. He would just go around to, and most of the bowls were never touched because they were always full because no one wanted any sweets.
I suppose that the whole point of people stealing the stuff is part of the excitement of stealing it. But when you're told you can have it, like,
it's not. There's no fun. Anymore. There's no excitement about it. No, exactly. We found one night shift. We found in the marketing department there was do you remember when Treebles released soft mints? And there was an advert, and it was called Mr. Soft, and it was about something. We found the outfit, and we got to try it on. It was a fencing mask with padded whiteness around it, and all the padding stuff. We were running around the offices wearing this thing, and I found the Refresher clown outfit, and trying to drive. I had an old Golf GTI Mark 1 convertible then, and trying to drive with that, and the wig on, and the nose, and the big shoes, and everything. Trying to drive that home to my flat with my wife, and make her laugh wearing this thing, and then drive back onto shift. It was such silliness. It's those things that you look back and you think, oh my God, did I really do that? Oh God, yeah.
Well, I had a bit of an epiphany the other day because my favourite shop, if I think back, I used to love things like HMV, Woolworths and stuff like that. And now I've got older, I get excited about going to Lidl. And I think this is my favourite shop. How sad am I? Walking into that first little bit where bakery bit is, and the little chocolate brownie squares, I'm full in brown paper bags of them, and Mrs. is going, whoa, don't you think 8's enough? I'm like, no. And that's my favourite part of the week now, is that. It's pretty sad. So question 3.
Go.
What is your favourite childhood memory?
Childhood memory? Oh, probably Hastings. Now, this was the time when I was probably about 6 or 7. It was just before my parents split up. And we had an aunt who lived in Hastings. Mm-hmm. And they had a fun fair down there. They still got the fun fair down there, but it was different back then. And we were given, me and my younger sister were given 25 pence, which doesn't sound a lot nowadays, but 25 pence was a lot when you're talking about the 70s, to go on the machines where some of them were only like 1 pence or 2 pence to ride, etc. And it was the sunniest. It was 1976. That was it. 1976. We were down at Hastings, and it was that summer. It was the heat wave we had, and it was just amazing.
Yeah.
Oh. Childhood memories, absolutely amazing.
Number 4, dream job or win the lottery. Now, dream job, I'm guessing you probably already had it. 47 jobs. Or a lottery win.
I've got to go for the lottery win. Yeah. Purely because, yes, I've had all the jobs, and I know that even if things happen and you get made redundant, with the amount of skills I've got, I can just go straight into another job. And listening to your previous podcast about these, in those days, as one of your colleagues say, you could literally just turn up and say, look, I can do that job. And you could talk to the manager and say, look, I'll do this, I'll do that. And he said, okay, I'll give you a go. And you could start doing it, and then you got employed. Nowadays, it's the CV, and then you get vetted through HR who don't understand the qualifications, the bits and pieces you get, etc. And if you don't have what they're asking for, you get exempted and you get rejected. But when you talk to the manager, they say, oh, yeah, I understand that. Yep, let's get you in for the interview, etc. And today it's now more who you know. And it's not your skills so much, but it's who you know. If you can convince the hiring manager to give you a chance, and you've got past that wall of HR, then you've got that chance to do it. So I know that dream job wise, I probably had quite a lot of dream jobs that most people would have actually wanted, and the experiences have gone with it. But with the lottery one, I would like to help others get through and enjoy some of the life things. I like those YouTube videos where you see those people who've helped others and say, look, I'll get your shopping for you. I can see you're struggling. Let me get your shopping for you, and treat people like that. And jobs, or give people that opportunity and say, look, let me help you get that job.
Yeah. Nice. So finally, question 5, what makes you smile?
Getting up, seeing me, that I'm still alive.
Yeah.
That I know full well I wouldn't be here if I hadn't gone through everything I've gone through, and that mentally, physically, and spiritually, I'm in a much better place. And it's waking up. I'm kind of scared. Every male in my family has not lived past the age of 58, and I'm 57, and it's that thing. But I'm not the same as them. They all smoke. They didn't eat healthy. They didn't do exercise a bit. We're different nowadays. So I'm hoping, my always aim was always to reach 100. My biggest aim in life. I want to reach 100, so I've lived 100 years of human life and experiences, and enjoy life, and look back and say, I'm going to be one of those old guys in those in the nursing home, and he's going to be, oh, I did this. Oh, of course you, Aaron, you did that. Yes, you did. Of course you did. Yeah, exactly. And when I pass away, they're going to find all these pictures and all these. Oh, he did do that. He did say what he did, etc. But they're going to think, oh, he's just one of those old mumbling fools who said he did that and he had that experience, etc.
The modern day Uncle Albert.
Yeah. Or a memory in the wall. Yeah.
Look, listen, Aaron, it's been fantastic talking to you. And like I said, if I had 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, that probably wouldn't be.
Oh, I'm sure we could have covered a lot more than that.
But yeah, it's been really interesting listening to your story. I've enjoyed every moment. But that's it, mate. Thank you very much again for joining me today.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate the opportunity to help. And I'm hoping that some of the stuff has helped others to either seek out, if you are going through those kind of like mental health issues, which are that they've taken, that there is a chance, there is a way to get out of this, etc. And those who've seen all these other previous jobs thinking, it's not the end of the world if you are going to lose your job, etc. There are other opportunities. Just got to get those, take them by the reins.
Absolutely. Look, thank you.
Brilliant.
And enjoy the rest of your day, Aaron.
Thanks, Nick. You take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to hit that follow button and join me next time for more chats on Nick Needs to Know.